Hello and welcome to the Choralosophy Podcast, a weekly podcast whose mission is multifaceted. Each week when you tune in, you will find episodes that question best practices, challenge music education dogma, facilitate conversations about touchy topics, demonstrate pedagogies, and conversations where colleagues learn from each other. This is episode 262, How to Avoid Making Our Singers Worse. Group vocal tips and singing instructions can be a minefield. Every voice in the room is different. It really is possible to say a thing in a choir rehearsal that helps one singer get better while making 10 worse. So let's be careful. This episode is sourced from a recent professional development that I gave for Wentzville, Missouri School District. The focus was vocal pedagogy concepts specific to a group setting. The crucial jumping off point in this episode is that our knowledge of our own voice does not qualify us to instruct the voice of others, and that has become a hill that I'm willing to die on. The choir teachers of the district and I delve into the complexities of teaching singing to children, particularly in group settings. We explore the unique challenges faced by vocal instructors, including the need for individualized instruction, but the importance of understanding the vocal anatomy and the impact of language on teaching methods. The presentation emphasizes the significance of fostering a supportive environment where kids can experiment safely, while encouraging them to explore their voices and navigate the intricacies of vocal pedagogy. It's a tricky thing. The job we do is hard. So tune in and have your thinking stimulated. I might challenge something that you do, but of course in this presentation, I'm also challenging things I used to do. So I'm always trying to lead by example in that sense of being reflective on what it is that I've said that I think I might have done to mess up singers, and I'll give some examples of that in there. But it might be that you hear some things that you agree with or disagree with, in which case I want you to head over to the Choralosophers Facebook page and jump onto a post about this episode and join the conversation or start your own. Your music program or event deserves a platform that does it all, without the extra costs. With Ludus, you get seamless ticketing, built-in marketing, powerful fundraising, and volunteer management, where volunteers can sign up, schedule shifts, and track hours with ease. Need to sell merchandise and concessions in person? Ludus Retail lets you log sales by each group, track inventory, keep everything organized. Hosting music lessons or theater camps? They have a classes feature, which makes registration and student tracking effortless. And it's free for your organization. Thousands of programs already trust Ludus because they help you focus on what matters most, the performance. Are you a director new to the profession? Or are you a seasoned director who is in a new place? One of my favorite tips for generating interest in the program and to instill buy-in is to plan a trip. There are so many options. You can go to Orlando, you can go to Ireland, or you can perform in a parade or a theme park. You can even take the stage at Carnegie Hall in New York. Wherever you end up, not only will your current crew look forward to the trip, but younger students will count the days until it's their turn to go. If you have no idea where to start, connect with Kaleidoscope Adventures at mykatrip.com. I'm not sure how much, if anything, out there has not gone up in price since 2020, but I know one thing that hasn't, and that is the membership to the Patreon and to the Substack to support this show. The people who are signed up over there as paid subscribers, as my thank you to them, they can get things like t-shirts from the choralosophy.com shop. They can also get access to my Google folder of teaching materials that I've talked about on the show for over the years. And of course, they just want to help make sure that this show can continue. And one of those benefits is a shout out on the show. Shout outs for the Inner Circle and producer tiers over on Patreon. We have Brian Long, Chandler Smith, Venture Studios, David Kowalczyk, Kyle Peterson, Max Jackson, Michael Herron, Rebecca Chalk, and Steve and Kathy Kakachik. Why is teaching kids to sing well hard? Can't see what they're doing. Can't just press a button. What else? Because they get nervous. Yep. Yeah.
Feeling sick or scared or stressed, it can impact your instrument.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with all those. Outside influences, chemical influences, for sure. What about, take that same question, why is it hard to teach a kid to sing well, and multiply it by the 40 that you have in your room? Why is it hard to teach multiple kids all at the same time to sing well? What layer of challenges does that bring in? Yeah.
Beating previously learned habits.
Oh, yeah.
They grew up maybe around someone that didn't sing as often, or they try to mimic what they hear on the radio.
Yep.
And they've built all of these poor habits, and now you have to break them, especially if you end up singing a song that they know.
Mm-hmm.
I made that mistake.
To break those habits.
My kids say, "Don't pop it one more time."
Yeah, it's always their fault.
came to North Carolina, but there was an opening.
So those are all good things, and I'm going to start this conversation with you guys about vocal pedagogy in a group setting, very specifically, and also throwing this one challenge in that nobody said. One of the challenges in teaching kids to sing well in a group setting is the thing you say to help one kid get better could make another kid worse without you realizing it. And that makes the language that we choose very, very important, but also very tricky in kind of like almost like a landmine kind of a scenario where you have to be careful. I've got a boy in my chamber choir who's a very conscientious learner. And I'm sure we've all had those kids. They're the kid that from the day they walk in your class in ninth grade, they just want to please you. Like they want to do well, and they're so obviously trying very hard, like all the time. And so, of course, the other day, my tenors, in general, in my chamber choir, were not making enough space between their molars. Essentially, they were not creating head voice resonance space. And I was talking about making more space there, and I was trying to be very technical with how I was explaining that, but every time we would try it, this boy would just keep opening his mouth farther because he was hearing me tell the other boys that they needed to make more space, and he wanted to follow instructions every time. So unbeknownst to me, he's making more and more and more and more to the point where he is now yelling with his larynx like way up here, and I had to stop, and I actually pointed that out in rehearsal. I said, we all know and he wants to do everything exactly right, but I need to be more careful with explaining that and monitoring everybody because he was doing exactly what I was telling this other kid who wasn't making nearly enough space to do, but he was following my instructions almost like he's in a chemistry class where you just got to like follow every instruction the teacher gives very meticulously, and then I was making it worse while I was making these other boys better. And so that in a lot of ways is the challenge of what we are trying to do because we are not trombones and we are not snare drums. Our band colleagues and our orchestra colleagues have a different challenge, and this is not about trying to put us against them or why our job's harder, but in a lot of ways, I know in my district, we get saxophones. All the kids that play saxophones, not only are they the same size and shape, they come from the same manufacturer. They are the same instrument. So they line up 10 saxophone players. They're all holding the same brand saxophone, the same specifications. Whether that kid is in puberty or not, the saxophone is the same. Whether that kid is hopped up on caffeine, as we said, that the saxophone is still the same. Whether that kid is on her period, the saxophone is still the same. And so the instructions for how to play the saxophone can be uniform across the entire band class. There is a right way to press the buttons down, a right way to blow, a right amount of wetness for the reed, etc. And it doesn't change from instrument to instrument, and it doesn't change from 7th grade to 8th grade. So there is what we're doing in choir classes is a very different thing pedagogically. There are many technical instructions that can be delivered in a way that applies to every single trombone player, for example, or every drum in the room, right? And for singing, there are, I would say, very few instructions that we can give that will apply to everyone. Very few. There are some, and we should know what they are. Hello. And we'll talk about some of that in a minute. And of course, voices are as varied as there are people in the room. So let's talk about like some examples of that. I know that a lot of choir teachers will do something like, okay, let's get our posture by standing up against a wall, and let's feel how straight up and down that is. Like, oh, okay, well, that works okay for me because of the way my body's shaped. I don't have like a whole lot going on back here. So, but if I was somebody with maybe let's say I was more blessed with rump, okay? Well, suddenly that activity no longer helps me. It's making me worse, right? But the teacher said I should get my posture against the wall. So therefore, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to now put my shoulders in a very awkward position as I come back out into the room. And that's just a silly example, but I've seen it. I've seen that we're going to get our body alignment based on the wall. That's an example. There's another one would be things like, okay, everybody open your mouth to the size of 2 Oreos. Very well could work for you, very well could work for one person, but everybody's jaw is different size. And so suddenly you've got the Oreo is a fixed amount of size, or 2 fingers is another one I've seen. I know that's uncomfortable for me, but for some people with small fingers, that might be totally fine. So the point is, like, these are those one-size-fits-all instructions that oftentimes vocal instructors give that I think we could think through better how to say those same things in a way that students can learn to individualize what they're hearing for their own body. Because everybody's body is shaped differently, especially in the vocal tract. There's almost, well, you guys know how varied fingerprints are, right? It's the same for the vocal tract. That's why everybody sounds different. That's why you sound a little bit like your dad as you grow up if you're a guy. But you can still tell it's not your dad. You are unique. you have the genetic material that your dad gave you and your mom gave you, and you have a very similar resonator, but you're still unique. So we have to be looking for those things. We realistically do not have time in a choral rehearsal to give customized vocal instruction like a voice teacher would. And so in a lot of ways, I believe that we shouldn't try. That should not be our mission, to try to feel like we are the voice teacher for all these kids. And of course, in any environment that we can, encouraging kids to take lessons privately is still a great thing. What we want to do, though, as a choir teacher is not make it worse. I think that's the main thing. I know a lot of voice teachers, even in the KC Metro, that typically for like really fancy singers, like the kids who really want to go to like Peabody Institute or Juilliard or whatever, where their voice teacher will flat out tell them, you are not to sing in the choir at your school. You are not to sing there. It will make you worse. And they're right. They're right. Because 9 times out of 10, it is those bad habits of singing with that sound that blends in that causes a lot of the problem in the first place. And so I think this today is just going to be about getting the kids to be where they're developing individually as singers. We talked about that in the morning with their music literacy, but also they're developing individually as solo singers, but not for the purpose of singing a solo necessarily. They understand how their voice works. That ought to be a goal. Okay, so some of the barriers that happen for music teachers, for choir teachers, I think, is this one. But there's no way I could be making my kids worse singers. I had a great voice teacher. I know about all the stuff that I'm talking about. But of course, having a good voice teacher and even being a really good singer does not make you a good voice teacher. Those are two different things. And a voice teacher's job, ultimately, in any style, is to help the student diagnose vocal faults. Why does that not work when you sing? What body part needs to do what, etc. And to help individuals use their instrument in the most efficient way possible. Ultimately, kind of trying to transcend the conversation around like style. It's not about style. It's about efficiency. Like, can you sing this line without it hurting, for example? Can you alter the style that you're singing it in? Can you choose a different vowel? Can you sing it at a different volume level? That flexibility comes from efficiency. Now with our voice teachers, raise your hand if you connect with like a voice teacher in your past who was very formative for helping you develop your confidence as a singer. Do we all have one? We probably wouldn't be here if we didn't, right? At doing the jobs that we're doing now. Your voice teacher was helping you learn how to use your instrument correctly, but not necessarily how to diagnose and fix other people's vocal faults. If we took undergrad voice, that was not why we were there. We were there to fix our own. And so, unfortunately for us, I actually don't think that looking back at our voice training helps us much in our job, because that was about our voice, and that doesn't really tell us a whole lot about the other voices that are in the room, which is why vocal ped training in general is important, right? So we get a little bit outside of our own voice and trying to understand the voice itself. Teaching a room full of people to sing the way that you sing will most likely cause problems. So I've got just so many stories about this, but one of them is, I think, the most illustrative of it, and I was a young voice teacher at the community college in Kansas City, one of the community colleges. And I had this 18-year-old girl student, female student, and she was so conscientious, like the other boy that I was talking about. She did everything I asked her to do. Like everything, I could tell she was practicing every little technique that I had given her. And weeks would go by, and she was not getting really any better. And I couldn't figure out why she wasn't getting better. It wasn't that her voice wasn't ugly. She had a good, natural, pretty tone. But we just couldn't get any more resonance. Like, it just wasn't, like, she was working so hard and producing so little out of her body, and she wasn't like, there wasn't a disability to consider or any of that stuff, and I just could not wrap my mind around why is she not able to decrescendo, why can't she get to this level of kind of ring in her voice, etc. And I couldn't figure it out. And so my wife, Beth, who is a voice teacher, and actually when I give this presentation, she's usually with me, so I'm trying to wing it. Most of what I know about the voice, I know from her. But she and I were just dating at the time. And I came back from a day teaching at the college and was talking about this student, and I was like, hey, I've done this, and I've done this, and I've done this, and we've been working on it for weeks and weeks and weeks, and she's just not getting better. What do I do? And Beth said, well, okay, so how are you teaching her to breathe? Like, explain to me pretend like I'm her, and how are you talking to her about breath? And so I stood up and I started demonstrating kind of my body alignment, and I started talking to her about, and I'm looking back on it now, and this is the language I was using, I was talking to her about the way my abdominal muscles feel when I breathe, and I was explaining that to her, and I was making sure that she tries to feel for all those things that I feel when I'm doing it. And then I show her, like, I'm showing the student where in my body I feel those things, and I get through this whole thing, and Beth just starts laughing. And she goes, she's a female student, right? And I was like, yeah, her entire thoracic cavity is built differently than yours. The shape is different. The muscles, the where you feel the muscular engagement is probably different. You're basically asking her to sing like a dude. Like you're asking her to sing like a boy. And it's embarrassing to tell the story now, but like I look back on it, it never dawned on me that the lessons I was learning in my voice studio in college are not the things I should then be verbatim giving out to all of my students. It just had not crossed my mind because those lessons were tailored for me and the shape of my body and where it was working for me. And so it caused me to just completely have to step back and go, I actually don't know anything about what I'm talking about right now. Like I thought I was super smart, but what I really was good at my voice lessons. And so it just kind of was an eye-opening experience for me. And luckily for me, that happened early in my teaching career where I started to figure out that some of the language that I was going to have to use would be different. So one way we could think about this is if we're trying to speak to a room full, I'm just going to keep using the number 40 because it's a nice round number of kids that might be in a choir class. Simplify the message. There might be 40 kids in the room. We need to figure out the things that we can say that are true for everybody. This is just linguistic preference for me, but I find it to be helpful so you can take and leave whatever you see here that you don't like. But I like to use the term alignment instead of posture. And the reason for that is because posture brings in a lot of ideas that kids already have about what that means. And it might come from ROTC, it might come from dance class, it might come from some kind of athletic activity that they do. Like what is putting yourself in good posture look like? And for a lot of kids that ends up being tense. Like this is good posture. Well, it's not for singing. It might be if you're about to salute a superior officer or whatever, but it's not good for singing. If you haven't already, I really think it's time for you to ditch the bulky sight reading books, the paper, all of the things that are already in the kids' folders in your classroom because it's not customizable to what they need in the moment. Sight Reading Factory allows this and so much more, including auto-assessment for at-home assignments, no more grading them individually. They can be graded in the moment. So use the Choreolosophy checkout code, Choreolosophy. When you check out, it'll give you a 10% discount every time you get a membership for yourself and for all of your students, which is really, really important so they can do this at home. So we talk about alignment, and the way we talk about it is that my skeleton is my frame, and that's going to be true for everybody in the room, and I need to figure out a way to stand so that my skeleton is holding up my weight and not my muscles. So body alignment essentially means that I'm going to figure out a way to align my frame so that my muscles can relax and have my body still be energetic and flexible. Some overall things that are true for pretty much everybody is if your feet are shoulder width and your shoulder blades and the back of your head are in an alignment of some kind, like I tell kids to feel for a triangle, imagine a triangle, then that's usually all you need. Because as soon as I come here, everybody watch my shoulders. I just broke my triangle, right? Now I've got my triangle again, but if I move my head too far forward, I lost my triangle. It's like a straight up and down triangle. Now, there are ways to get this wall thing that a lot of people do to work. Sometimes if you just want to get the kids to find their triangle against a wall, you can. But that's really all that it helps for, because now I can feel that my little process that sticks out of the back of my skull is touching the board, and my two scapula are touching the board. And now I can kind of feel, because every kid, almost of every body shape, can find those points of contact. And then I can step forward and feel that I've got my triangle. I feel like I'm about an inch taller than I normally am, but I figured it out for my own body. So that's just a couple different ideas. And in general, why I like to use the word alignment, because I want them to remember that the goal is to be in alignment, creating lines, and that's going to feel different for everybody. I like to use terms, and this is something I really get from Beth, and she's convinced me, that using terms like energy and flexibility are always better than things like support, flexing, holding, squeezing. Like any of those terms I would avoid, because they're going to create different types of tension or keep, even the word keep your mouth open. Well, that's, for a lot of kids, it's going to cause some kind of a tension reaction. So energy and flexibility are really, really good words all the time, because if the tone we're looking for, let's say the tone is lifeless, can there be more energy in that tone, will usually lead to some kind of flexible body reaction, because we want everything about the jaw, everything about the tongue. It's not held in stasis, it's just flexible. I'm able to move at any given moment. And that's really important. And then our larynx also comes to play. I call mine Larry. This is just the dumbest thing, but I like to do this little Larry the larynx sock puppet. Okay, so here's the routine. I do this for the kids at the beginning of the year. Repeat after me, please humor me. This is embarrassing, but this is what I do. Okay. Hello, my name's Larry, and this is what I sound like when I'm happy. And this is what I sound like when I'm depressed. And then I press in to try to simulate that depressed soft palate and the larynx that goes with it, because the kind of the mythology in vocal music around the soft palate is that it does a thing to cause us to sound better or worse. It doesn't. It causes the larynx to move. The muscles that move like watch on a, what's that called? Like the CAT scan thing. That's not the MRI. That's what I'm thinking about. Where it'll show the body parts moving from the inside. If you move your soft palate, other stuff moves too. Like it doesn't move on its own, right? So what's really happening a lot of times when we get that sound of that's a high larynx. That's not a depressed soft palate. That they move together, right? So if we can keep Larry the larynx in our happy little relaxed, flexible, energetic state, then a lot of the things that we do work better. And so I will oftentimes just pull out Larry the larynx demonstration only as a way to get the kids to laugh, but also relax, because I'm trying to get them to relax. Very similar to the sound that I had them do for private school voice or whatever, just trying to get them into that relaxed larynx position. Here's another one we can try. Everybody take 2 thumbs and find your larynx, find your voice box. Don't hurt yourself, but kind of press in past your voice box into the squishy area. It shouldn't choke you because your windpipe is in the middle. And then if you just swallow, you'll feel it move past your thumbs. I kind of have it dug in right here so I can feel it move up and down. And I just tell the kids to try to find where it goes when they swallow, and it kind of drops down below your thumbs. And then when you take a deep breath, see if you can feel that same basic motion. You feel the larynx, you can actually kind of feel a little bulb on each side. And then can I get that to be in a flexible position? And then we might make a humming, like an aw sound, like aw, and push it back and forth. It's really fun and kind of gross. Try it, right?
I feel like I'm going too hard over it.
Because number one, it's an anatomy lesson. So they're also finding out like that my larynx is actually right here. I can feel it. It's not a mystery. It's like right in there and I can feel it vibrating. Or just do like a voiced consonant, like, and you can change your sound by just manually moving your larynx. Very strange. So we do a lot of little exercises like that. Another one would be, and this is again back to that idea of trying to avoid the types of language that might work for you but might cause other kids some trouble. So rather than saying something like open your mouth, fit a Hot Wheel in your mouth, or open your mouth further, or any of those types of expressions, I try to avoid all of those, and I just teach them how to figure out if your mouth is open enough and how to figure out if your mouth is is open too much, like my student that I was talking about before. So what can we do to teach them that? So here's another one. Take a finger and find where your earlobe skin meets your cheek skin. And then like what's that? And then like you're trying to keep your grandma from noticing that you yawned in church, stifle the yawn, see if you can find a hole that shows up. Your finger can even fit in it, right? For almost all vowel sounds that we want them to sing, that needs to be there, okay? And they can check to verify if it's there. Okay, so that's what I teach kids, is that's how we know. That's where we go to check to see if our mouth is open enough. That's like the bare minimum. Okay, but then we also need to figure out a place to check to see if we've gone too far. So for that, we take 2 thumbs, we go up under the chin, find where the bone gives way to the squishy part, and then we're just going to very, very slowly start opening our jaw until that squishy part gets hard. At a certain point, that muscle will flex. Do you feel it? Uh-huh. So what I teach kids there is if you've gone to the point where that muscle has grabbed, you've gone too far. So we check to see if it's open enough here. Have I gone too far here? So in my rehearsals, you'll see a lot of kids that sing like this at first, because they're trying to feel the hole here and they're trying to feel squishy under here. Right? And then I usually demonstrate like what happens if I go too far. Yeah, and that was not me making an affect. That was what you heard the moment that muscle flexed. And what its ability, now my larynx can't ring anymore, can't vibrate freely anymore because that muscle flexed, and of course everything's connected in there. So once that grabbed, all the muscles around my larynx are now grabbing as well. So that kind of demonstration doesn't take very long. They can usually get that concept pretty quickly, but the other cool thing about that, teaching it that way, is that it is personalized for every kid. Because notice I did not have them turn around, okay, everybody look at your neighbor and make your mouth match. Because then some will go too far, some will not go far enough, because they're trying to visually do something that should be oral in the first place. We should be hearing if it's the right vowel. We can't see a vowel. We can hear if it's the right vowel, and it will not look the same on every kid. Some kids have bigger lips, some kids have smaller lips, some kids have a bigger jaw, some kids have a smaller jaw, some kids have a wide mouth opening, some kids have a narrow mouth opening. So getting them to turn around and look at each other to see if they're singing the right vowel, I think, is the wrong approach. So teaching them the anatomy of those vowels and what that should look like and feel like for them is really important. I have a mirror also in the classroom. So I have, it's like a mirror about this size. And so rather than having them look at each other's mouths, I'll just walk around with the mirror. And if I see a kid doing it wrong, I'll just hand them the mirror and walk away and continue rehearsal. And of course, at first, that is very embarrassing for them because they're being called out for being wrong. But we try to normalize that in my class, like we're here to learn how to sing. So all this means is I needed you to see what you were doing, because then they know how to fix it. Like, oh, I can see tension in my face. Oh, that looks bad. I'm going to relax. Another one that I like to make sure that they're doing is feeling lip tension also. For example, I don't know if you guys get this in St. Louis. Well, I'm going to actually ask. Let's call this research. What do you feel like is the hardest vowel to get your kids to sing? So I would say the O's and Oo's in general, and that whole family of vowels for Midwestern kids are very, very difficult because, and this will be really awkward, but I'm gonna have to ask you guys to look at my face in kind of an intense way. Are we friends enough for that yet? Okay, and so as you watch me talk, I want you to just try to notice what do you see about the corners of my lips. As I say all the words that you can understand very clearly in English, what are the corners of my lips doing? They're not moving almost at all, right? And so, because that's our accent. That is the Midwestern American English accent. And that's why British people sound funny to us. But if you watch them speak and turn off the volume, you will see the whole time. Because that's why they have the accent that they do, is because they're moving their mouth differently than us. That's all it is. That's what produces an accent. And so getting kids in the Midwest to actually get their muscles to a place where they go feels really weird to them. Feels very, very strange. But it's not just about feeling weird. They never use these muscles, these striated muscles that are in our cheeks, that are actually the ones responsible for getting our lips to come out in front of our face. So typically what I see a lot of times is the first time they're trying to really truly get an O or an ooh, it ends up looking like this. Right? Because they're doing what they hear the teacher say. Okay, round lips, everyone, round lips. And that is round lips, but it's not the ones we want because they're using the wrong muscles. And so again, I'm trying to take the same approach with all my language of, I'm not just going to tell them round lips. I'm not going to tell them open your mouth more. I'm not going to tell you stand up straighter. Those are all very vague that kids don't understand. Which muscles do you want me to use? And where do you want me to move them to? Like those are very, very helpful things for kids. So we've got enough space here. We don't have too much space. We check here. And are my lips relaxed? I can't think of really any beautifully sung vowel sound that incorporates tight, pinched, pursed lips. Even ooh. Like if I go ooh, my lips are flexible still. Ooh. It changes the sound quite a bit just to have that tension there. So these are all just a way for us to think about these things and kind of refine our language a little bit. But at the very least, if you get nothing from me today on this topic, is just to give you a little bit of healthy skepticism, to ask yourself about, how am I saying this? Could I say it in a better way? Could I say it in a clearer way that would be applicable to all singers in my room? Even if you don't like my words, that's not the point. But if you're just rethinking how your words might apply to different people in different ways. So with vowels and mouth shape, this one, I was hinting at this earlier, but I do a lot of speaking. So getting kids to speak in the voice that we're trying to sing in is crucial. Has anybody heard this term, voice mapping? All right, what does it mean to you? You can't define a term with using the term. So mapping out the tessitura, that's not how I'm using it. That's why I'm curious. That's a good thought too, and that's actually close to how I'm using it. I use that term in the context of a particular song and how we're about to sing it. I teach the students to map their voice to the song. So let's say we have a song that, in fact, I'll take this, the one we did earlier. And if I am a tenor or a bass, I would find out what my C sounds like. I would know that that's my kind of supported head voice up there. I would know where that is. I would teach them how to figure that out like we talked about earlier. And I would have them speak it in rhythm, approximating the range to map out how much energy it would take to sing that line. So it might sound like, because now I need my chest voice. So I'm going to have them practice that. The day is done, thus wanes the dawn. And I'm having them get the rhythms down, but also feel how much air does it take to get my chest voice to ring and resonate for that whole 3 beats, for example. I'm planning out the energy that it takes. Then we would add pitch. So voice mapping is what we do before we add pitch to something that they're having a vocal strain or stress doing. See, I'm going to make up one because everything in this song is kind of soft. But let's pretend like measure 28 was marked fortissimo. I would probably have them do something closer to like what I call superhero voice for the boys. I would have them say something like, "I'll save you!" And they can usually do that because it's cool and sounds macho. And they'll go, "I'll save you!" And then I'll say, use that voice, and I'll say, "I." And they'll say like this masculine, like massive amount of resonance, because I know that if I had asked them to sing it that way first, they would go, and it would press and it would be ugly. And so we map out that voice first, and then we add pitch on top of that. And it's never right the first time. So what usually happens is they try to get those, like I'll have them speak and then sing, and then speak and then sing. And what I'm asking them is, right now, which one is the most resonant? Is the speaking more resonant or is the singing more resonant? And at first, of course, it's always the speaking. They can speak more resonantly than they sing. And we just keep doing it, and I just keep doing it until it matches. Until the way you take a breath and the way you start phonating is the same for when you speak versus when you sing. And of course, you got to quote the movie Elf to them. That's important. You guys know the line from Elf with Will Ferrell about singing? Do you remember what he says in that movie?
That one?
He does say that, but there's a line in that movie where he says, singing is just like talking, but your voice goes up and down and it lasts longer. Now, of course, I'm watching that movie and I'm going, yes, that's it. Like vocal pedagogy wisdom from Will Ferrell, it is. And then I explained to the kids that like you have one voice. You don't have a singing voice and then you put that away and you take out your speaking voice. It's all one voice. And so this speaking the vowels into formation is oftentimes the fastest way to get them to sing naturally, beautifully resonant vowel sounds, because we speak all day long. We don't sing. And so there's this concept called vocal affect. So voice mapping is one. Vocal affect is the idea of taking a natural human emotion expressed through the speaking voice and then connecting that to their singing line. So some really common ones would be like a baby cry voice, like a wee, wee kind of a sound, and getting them to find that ring and that resonance. Another one would be like, "Come on, mom, 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 come on, mom." And they can get that sound really quickly, and then you've just taught them really the ideal ah vowel. Ma, mom, ma, ma, come on, mom. Use that vowel. That's our ah, ma. And they get to it because typically when they're in choir, they're overthinking what the vowel is supposed to be. And oftentimes they're overthinking what the vowel is supposed to be because we've taught them to, sadly. And so they're thinking about, well, and where do I match my neighbor? Rather than just listening. Does it sound natural? Does it sound clear? So there's a ton of these. I would strongly recommend, if you're jotting down notes, there is an episode 160 on choralosophy where the guest is Kenneth Bozeman, who is a vocal pedagogy author, guru. He's kind of like up there with Tietze and some of those other voice science people. And the episode is actually the entire episode is just him giving examples of vocal affect that he uses with singers to get them to sing naturally. And I learned, that's the great thing about being a host of a podcast, I learned so much. Like every week I'm interviewing some fancy, expert on something. But I can tell you that one episode, just by interviewing Ken Bozeman about that, made my choir sound better the next day. Like I took ideas from him from that episode, and I tried all of them, and I use them every day and have ever since. It's made a huge difference, especially in the boys' voices, because that's their voice change is so hard for them to negotiate, but the girls as well. There's tons of different affects that they can use. Other ones would be like calling voice, like in any kind of superhero voice is a vocal affect because it expresses an emotion. The whiny, the hey mom voice is kind of like a whine. You can also teach them the sob voice, which is the kind of the oh come on oh kind of a sound, and they love to play around with these sounds and kind of like if you're sobbing oh, and that also releases quite a bit of tension in the larynx, and they can put that sound. So it's really like I explain this to them as being like a sound laboratory. Like we're going to experiment with all the different sounds that we're capable of until we can find one that works for this song. And it's always very personalized to the song. Like I said this morning, feel free to stop me if I'm going too fast or you have questions. Oh, I can't skip this one. Onset coordination. Let's see if I can explain this in the way that is going to come across the right way. I actually don't think that we can teach much of the other things that we try to teach in choir if we don't teach them to sing with a coordinated vocal onset first. You can't sight read, because if air is escaping all the time when you sing, then you're going to run out of breath. And And then you'll usually have counting problems because the dotted half note now only wants to last one beat because you just ran out of breath. And then you told yourself that you couldn't read. In reality, you just had a breathy voice. And those are two different things. So that's one. The vocal onset also is where what allows us to sing without tension. So you notice that when we do, and kids will do this too, they will be very, very accurate with it. But if I say, "Come on, Mom," and they say, "Come on, Mom," it sounds just the same. Not a single one of them comes back with, "Come on, Mom." But they sing like that. They do that all the time, right? And so they're able to get to that beautiful resonating, ringing sound because the onset is just automatically coordinated. So other ways to try to get at that would be like common expressions or words that have the vowel sound you're trying to get them to sing in, but are not the words from the song, are sometimes very helpful because it takes it out of context. So let's say I want them to sing like an vowel beautifully. I might just have them say, every orange, in like in that voice. But I won't use that because I want them to not screw around. So, right. But then almost every time that vowel sound that they make will be a beautiful, resonant vowel, which, as you guys probably know, kids, that's another tough one for kids to sing well because they tend to want to over-open it and it ends up going or somewhere on one of those ends of the extreme. And so just getting them to speak is super, super helpful. And as far as coordinating onsets, I do a lot of, especially with the girls, because the girls' changing voice is that very breathy, air escaping kind of problem. You know, the boys have their own problems, but that's usually not one of them. And so I just do a lot of until they can get to the point where they're no longer, but then I have to hold them to that standard on every note we sing. And it can be very stressful and frustrating for them. And that's also partly why I do a lot of stopping and starting at the beginning of the year. That's why Sight Reading Factory Level 1 takes 15 minutes at the beginning of the year. It's because I'm not going to let them go on to the next note until they've coordinated all of those things. And because that sets up so many other things that we do. You can't ask them to sing louder if they're singing through a chink in their vocal folds. It's not going to work. Talked a little bit about choral band-aids, so I've listed out some of them. This is not to try to make anyone feel bad because they use these sometimes. Trust me, I've used all these. I don't anymore, or if I do, if I try to use one of these, I go like this in front of my kids and I punish myself. And they know that I just said something that I used to say, but I don't anymore. So I'm going to let's talk about some of these. We already talked about the Oreos thing and just how, why it doesn't necessarily work. It might work for a kid with a relatively large jaw, but it doesn't work for everybody. Talked about keeping the soft palate lifted. Almost always will induce tension if you ask kids to sing and lift their soft palate. And the reason for that is that you can't really lift your soft palate. You don't have the necessary muscular brain connection to lift it in some way without lifting other things too. That's the challenge. And also, if you look at the soft palate on an MRI, even when it moves, it only moves about a quarter of an inch, not even a quarter of an inch usually. It not even, it's barely moving. What's moving a lot though are all the other muscles in the larynx as well when we manipulate that. Of course, anybody know why this one's wrong? Your diaphragm's involuntary. So good luck. Now, of course, that's an area of confusion for a lot of people because I think of the terminology, so it's a little bit semantic, but I can move my diaphragm. Yeah, you can, but you have to move other muscles to do it. You've got to move other muscles. The diaphragm's just along for the ride. So why not cut straight to the chase and talk about the muscles you are actually using? Because you can consciously control them, so let's at least teach the kids about the things that they can consciously control. Of course, our diaphragm is way up here, attached underneath the rib cage, comes all the way around. It's like flat like a pancake, comes all the way across. There's a hole in the middle for your windpipe to go up through and your spinal column and all that. But once you get to the part that is the big flat muscle, it doesn't even have any nerve endings in it. So not only could it not feel pain if you punctured it, you can't send a signal to it. So it doesn't have the ability to receive a signal for what to do. What it's really doing is it's responding to, there's a collection of nerves around on the edge, and it's responding to the motion of your intercostal muscles as you start to expand your breath. So you can control these. Even without breathing, I can move my intercostal muscles. I can kind of send weird little, looks like I'm dancing, but I'm not. I'm just trying to send little signals to my stomach muscles. I can move those. So we teach that. Teach what is anatomically correct. I think that's better. Did anyone else grow up in a round vowels choral culture? Where round your lips, round your lips, round your lips. Did any of you guys grow up hearing that all the time? Not really? Oh, you're blessed. Okay, I did, for sure. Of course, so the examples that I grew up hearing a lot, and maybe if I give some examples, you'll recognize it. The E sound, for example, should be sung with round lips. The problem is, that's an umlaut. That is not, in fact, an E. When you put your lips in that position, you are singing the U with the 2 dots on top of it in German. That's what that vowel sound is. But there's a lot of American choirs that instruct all of their choirs to do that on all vowels. So like even ah becomes ah, ooh, and we overcover everything. Now the reason we do that is because you can get to a blended sound quicker. That's why I call it a Band-Aid. You're essentially muting all of the overtones of the kid's voice that make them sound special and exciting in the service of getting that chord to lock in sooner. Because of course, ooh, a round lip vowel, turns off all the really high overtones, and getting them to match is a whole lot easier. But I'm just going to suggest that I don't think that's a great way to teach them to be a better singer, because if they leave our class, they can't sing that way. They'll sound pretty ridiculous. Even just like people's perceptions of the way classical singers sing in general is also just a funny thing. I went to sing the national anthem at my baseball game. Long story, but the short version of it is that I went to sing at this middle of South Dakota baseball field that was being dedicated to my grandpa, because he used to work in the baseball organization in that town. So they invited me to come up and sing at the national anthem. My whole family was there. Of course, I sing in my semi-operatic way, but not really. I wasn't like really trying to go for it in operatic style or anything like that. I was just singing with resonance, right? And trying to sing some beautiful vowel sounds like I've been trained to do. And my family's there. My uncle, who knows nothing about singing or music, comes up to me afterwards and he's like, "That was pretty good. But why'd you like sing it in a British accent?" And I was like, I didn't actually. I just moved my mouth when I was singing, and so you heard it as a British accent because I sang and ooh, and those types of sounds that we don't incorporate into our speech at all. But I point that out. That's actually worth having that story in this conversation, because our kids perceive that too. Like they perceive the vowel sounds that we're asking them to do as like cringy and weird, because it's like, why does he want us to sound British? So we might as well have that conversation, because it's not actually British. They're just pure vowel sounds. A pure vowel to me is the exact vowel anatomy of each of the vowels that we use typically when we sing that naturally will create a amplified overtone spectrum. So it's pure in the sense, I also with the no diphthong thing, it's pure in the sense that if I'm trying to sing an E sound, it is just E. It's not E plus oo. It's not umlaut. It's a pure vowel. Umlauts are blended vowels. They have a name for that. It's called a blended vowel. So I'm trying to teach kids to be able to sing pure vowels if that's what the song calls for. IPA for the E sound would look like that. And then of course we're not going to do all of them, but there would be an ah, like in Italian, pasta. But then there's also ah, like father in English. There are two different vowel sounds. And then we get also all the way over here to the other side, and we get to the oo, and we call these the closed vowels, and these are the open vowel end of the spectrum. This side is the tongue vowels, and this is the lip vowels. Tongue vowels are things like e, ah. They don't involve the lips or the jaw at all. And this side are the lip vowels where my lips start engaging. So if I go from pasta, ah, that side of the chart are the lip vowels. And so we try to teach the kids that the way to find the pure version of all those vowels is to listen for the resonance that happens in your voice. You can hear all the different permutations of ah, right? But you can definitely hear that the overtones start to ring, and then I kill them. And then they start to ring, and then I kill them. All right, so listen again. The pure vowel is the one that rings, and I can't do that for any singer. That's something we experiment with, to try to find what does ah feel like for you in a way that rings. Because here's the thing, choral blend, the concept of choral blend is incredible when you have a bunch of singers who have already done that work. And so then we sing ah together as a choir based on whether or not my ah vowel that starts to ring next to your ah vowel that starts to ring will blend. They will blend. Like the overtones to pop out? Yes. We're amplifying each other's overtones by all singing the same pure vowel. But what we're not doing is we're saying, let's turn to each other's face and like make it look the same. Because my pure ah is not going to look the same as yours. What we're listening for is the singer's formant to pop in those overtones. And choirs who can do that are the ones that we all look up to as the most incredible choirs in the world, like a Polyphony, or like a Voces 8, or somebody like that, or even just like more recent groups like some of the American pro choirs like Skylark or some of those groups. The reason they sound so cool is because their singers have been trained enough individually that they're all figuring out, they know what O sounds like for them to ring either. So if I want to try to align multiple vowels in that way, we might do something like this. I'm going to say, all right, we're going to work from ah to oo. But I'm trying to still hear the buzz. I'm trying to still hear the ring, because what a lot of young singers will do is they will get ah, especially the boys. The boys will get resonance on ah first, typically. The girls will get resonance on E first. They can get that pretty quickly. But then almost all the singers in the room will do and it'll go away. And once they've been taught to hear that ring and that resonance, then it's also easier to hear when it goes away. Okay, so which is really cool. And then I also pull in the spectrograph thing. I use Voce Vista, which is a kind of a fancy collegiate vocal ped tool. But I don't know if you guys have seen this yet, though. Chrome Music Lab now has a free one. Have you guys seen it? It's not as accurate as the one that Voce Vista has, and you don't get to see, like, Voce Vista will show you what pitch it is, and it'll also show you how much time has elapsed, plus you can record it and play it back. So if you have it in your budget to get Voce Vista in your classroom, I would highly recommend it. But in the meantime, I put Chrome Music Lab spectrograph up on the screen, and I'll just let them sing into it. And I set up a podcast mic, basically, but I set it like on a table about this far from them, and just have them sing and like adjust the gain so that it's really showing them a clear picture. But it's a really cool way to get them to listen for resonance, is that they can also see it. So I would recommend that. And so again, we're defining pure vowel sounds as ones that kind of light up those cool ringing overtones. And if all the singers are doing that, then a blended sound will happen. So the way I teach blend to choirs is essentially is that we don't try to blend. Blend is not a thing you try to do. Blend is a thing that will happen if certain other things are happening. So if we are singing the right note on the right vowel at the right time with the right resonance, we will blend. That will be the happy byproduct of that. Okay, so we've talked about vocal affect a little bit already, but this is just kind of a review of terminology. Vocal affect are easily reproducible expressions of human emotion, and they're a fantastic way to get kids to explore all of the colors that their voice can make. And this is the kind of thing that you bring this into your classroom next week and your choirs will sound better tomorrow. It makes a huge, huge difference to get them to successfully speak the sound first. After about a month or so, if you're doing this kind of stuff every day, after about a month or so, it is really ideal if your kids have an entire toolkit for what vocal affects they would pull out to attack different problems. So I think of it as, what vocal affect do I want to use if I'm going high and loud? What about high and soft? What about mid voice and medium? What about super low? All those types of things. For sopranos and altos, sometimes the really high stuff, I can't demonstrate it, but the really high stuff kind of feels like a scream to them if they've never done it before. And I don't mean like a throaty scream, I mean more like a 1980s horror movie like shriek. Like, it doesn't sound like that, but that's what it feels to them like they're doing, because they're not used to like really like wailing up there. And so that once they get it right, that's kind of how they describe it. It's like, it feels like I'm in like a scream voice. Like, well, as long as it doesn't hurt, that's probably what you're doing. That's what that much energy. And then of course for the girls going into their chest voice, they can bring, I like to just play with the gender norms, to be honest, because they go into their chest voice and they kind of feel manly at first. And so I'll have them just like, "What's up, bro?" And they'll say, "What's up, bro?" And they think it's funny. But then like, okay, that's your chest voice, and you can use that. So I'm just fitting these to my personality. That's why I use very non-technical terms like private school voice and superhero voice and wine voice and all that kind of stuff. But the point is that it's the exploration that helps them. I do find, though, that the boys and adolescents benefit from this more than anyone else. The speed at which I can get them to sing something that is not ugly is very nice. It's very exciting. Because I know for me, teaching the boys for a long, long time was probably my least favorite part of the job. I didn't get the reward quick enough, and I just didn't like them either. They smell bad, and they screw around, and they don't like calm down as easily as the girls do. And so I'd say for the first probably 5 to 7 years of my career, I just did not like teaching the boys. And newsflash, they didn't like me either until I started liking teaching them. But of course, in order for me to like teaching them, I had to figure out how to help them, because I didn't. And part of it too is I wonder sometimes if those of us who become choir teachers, how easily we forget that we were probably amongst the more privileged kids in our choir class. And I don't mean privileged like economically. I mean privileged musically. And we were the ones held forward as awesome. And we were the ones that had musical experiences and obviously felt good enough about our abilities that we could see ourselves doing this as a career. And it goes back again to teaching our voice, or our kids to sing the way we were taught to sing. In the same way, our target audience is actually not the future music educators in the room, because that's going to be a very tiny target audience in your class, and trying to figure out ways to get them all to feel like they could do this. So I look back at this kind of stuff. Maybe some of my teachers when I was younger were educated on some of these things, but for the most part not, because I know I wasn't taught any of these things. I didn't learn any of this stuff in undergrad. I didn't learn it in grad school. Like there were a lot of things that I had to go outside of choral, vocal, music education, pedagogy stuff to find a lot of these answers, whether it be from a vocal pedagogue who's like more of a collegiate voice teacher like Ken Bozeman, or going to the neuroscience world to figure out how kids' brains read, or because nobody's teaching me this stuff. If you want to hear the rest of this episode, head over to Patreon or Substack. That is choralosophy.substack.com or patreon.com/choralosophy. Become a paid subscriber there, and you'll have access to the rest of this presentation, along with all the other Wentzville presentations that I gave that day, plus my full library of past professional developments and conference sessions, etc., which are available to subscribers there. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of a conversation. If you are still hearing my voice, that means you're one of the MVPs, one of the diehards, one of the real ones, as the kids say. So if you are willing on the way out to check out a few different ways that you can help me continue to make this show high quality. One, use the promo code. That's the biggest one. At Sight Reading Factory, at mymusicfolders.com, at mychoirropes.com, at graphitepublishing.com, and endeavormusicpublishing.com. All of those take the Choralosophy checkout code. And of course, now the newest one is 3-Minute Theory. You can get a 15% discount when you enter Choralosophy at checkout there. And of course, going to Apple Podcasts and leaving a positive review is very helpful there, and sharing the episodes to your colleagues in real life and on social media. All of those things are incredibly helpful and allow me to continue to create this resource for you. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.